It's difficult to build partnerships and do the work that we're doing when we're just in an electronic box, So I'm so glad you're here. If we can start off, just would love to go around and do introductions so we get to know who you are and the organizations that you represent. And I'll turn it over to
Thank you, Elizabeth. Great to see everyone here today. I'm Victoria Wittig. I am the ambassador for the Northwest Indiana Urban Waters Federal Partnership and currently serve as vice chair of the Chicago Wilderness Alliance. And we'll move along.
Hello, I'm Laura Riley. I'm the managing director of Chicago Wilderness Alliance. Thank you for being here.
Hello, I'm Aspen Walters. I'm here with CMAP. I'm an associate policy analyst who's just recently started. And just as you go around, make sure to use these microphones when you're chiming in throughout the meeting. That way our people online can hear.
Hi, I'm Joel Brummeyer, president of the Alliance for the Great Lakes, and I'm here today to talk about federal funding.
Hi, my name is Liana Smale. I was with the Forest Service until last week with the Urban and Community Forestry Program.
Hi, everybody. I'm Laura Goodrian. I'm the Chicago Program Director with the Keller Science Action Center at the Field Museum. I'm also on the steering committee.
Hello, everyone. I'm Isaiah Ballinger, Deputy Director of Conservation Experiential Programming Department at the Forest Preserves of Cook County.
Double duty. Good afternoon. I'm Eric Knighty, Director of Natural Resources for DuPage County Forest Preserve.
Afternoon, everybody. My name is Ted Hafner, and I am on the steering committee, but I am also the coordinator for the Chicago Wilderness Alliance goal team initiatives.
Hi there, Dan Salas, Director of the Sustainable Landscapes Program at University of Illinois, Chicago, and have a few members of our team here. Happy to be a partner with Chicago Wilderness.
Hi everyone, Caroline Hernandez with the University of Illinois, Chicago. Could you hear him?
Could you hear me?
Do you want me to go again? Okay. Hi everyone, Caroline Hernandez with the University of Illinois, Chicago.
Hi everyone, Ann Jansen, also with the University of Illinois, Chicago.
Hi everyone, I'm Catherine O'Reilly, also with the University of Illinois, Chicago.
Hello. Bob Hoyer, H&A Networks Consulting, and I'm with the Growing with Ag Committee.
I'm Paul Botts, president of the Wetlands Initiative here in Chicago.
John Wasik, Commissioner of Lake County Forest Preserves and Lake County Board, and also on the steering committee.
Brad Hansel with Prairie State Conservation Coalition.
Hello, Ashley Bell, Environmental Quality Specialist with University of Illinois Extension.
Hi, I'm Catherine Calkins. I'm on the board of Kettle Moraine Land Trust in southern Wisconsin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Noreen Rana. I'm a senior project manager with the Department of Cultural and Natural Resources at the Chicago Park District.
Good afternoon, folks. I'm Drew Hart with the U.S. Forest Service. I serve here in the Chicago region with our urban and community forestry program. I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you. I'm Cherie Fisher with the U.S. Forest Service for 22 years and 3 more days.
Hi, everybody. I'm Maggie Jones from Stantec.
Hey, everyone. I'm Tim Kenning with the National Parks Conservation Association.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelsey Pudlock, a senior planner here at CMAP.
And I'm Nora Beck, a principal at CMAP.
Let's see, I'm going to go first to Lake. Do you want to introduce yourself? I'll go in the order I see you on my screen.
Hi, I'm Lake Schulke. I am the program assistant for Chicago Wilderness, and yeah, I'm here taking notes.
Next up, Nathaniel.
Hi, I'm Nathaniel Pilla with the Midwest Biological Survey in Steering Committee.
Melissa.
Sorry, couldn't get the unmute button to work. Hi, I'm Melissa Kustik. I am with Landscape Illinois, and I'm also a co-chair on the CWA Partnership Engagement Committee.
Hi, Hannah Cusick. I'm a landscape architect at Living Habitats, sitting in for Heidi Natura today.
Thank you. Susan.
Hi, I'm Susan Regasius. I'm the Executive Director for the American Society of Landscape Architects.
Casey.
Hi, Casey Sullivan, Natural Resources Manager at Argonne National Laboratory.
Oliver.
Oliver Luker, I run Seek Solutions, a company focused on carbon sequestration.
Leslie.
Hi, I'm Leslie Dorworth, and I'm with Illinois Indiana Sea Grant.
Bill.
Hey, I'm Phil Nicodemus. I'm Research Director with Urban Rivers, also on the steering committee and co-lead for the Healthy Waters team.
And finally, Sergio. Can you hear us, Sergio? All right. Sergio Vargas is with Illinois Environmental Council. He is also on the steering committee. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Deborah Walker Johnson. I'm President and Executive Director of the Forest Preserve Foundation, and I'm on the steering committee.
So you guys can hear me okay? We'll keep going here on this. One of the things for those that's the first time, we've kind of created some shared agreements. And if you're following along, hopefully with the invite on Session Lab, this is the tool that we've been using with our agendas and putting the attachments of items in preparation for the meeting. So you'll be able to go back to that resource and take a look at some more content of what's being shared. It looks like we're also getting some new arrivals, so we'll circle back here. Kathy, great to see you. Hello, hello. You want to do introductions? Just catch. Good to have you here, Kathy. Yay. Good to have you with us, Lindsay. So all the resources are there. The other piece that we have with our meetings is our shared agreement. So we've kind of created, this is a space when we're here, we come wearing our organizational hats as our partners, because the Chicago Wilderness Alliance is representative of the many diverse partners that reside within the 4 states along the South Shores of Lake Michigan. But we're here to participate, to share, and to share the floor with other voices to make sure, we share that space with everyone. We'll stick to our agendas. And then one of the things that we love is those clarifying questions. So feel free to, if there's something that needs a further deeper dive and you want more clarity, go ahead and ask. It's a safe space. And we want to make sure, because that's the way we'll really get to solutions and working collaboratively to hear from you. So if we can agree on those shared agreements, that's what we kind of uphold during our regular meetings. Awesome. With that, our first order of business that we have, since the quarterly meetings are our business meetings, is our agenda. So if I could have a motion to approve our agenda for today, I would consider that. Motion. Thank you, Victoria. Do we have a second? Second. Thank you, Eric. Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none. All those in favor motion by saying aye.
Aye.
I will lean in here. I'll put it right here. Thank you. And all those in favor, aye. I heard that. Any opposed, nay? Okay, the agenda stands as presented. And again, just another reminder for those that are new, the voting at the council as partners and as executive council members, everybody has a voice. So you can move items to approve, and it's not just the steering committee. The steering committee, our role and officers is to help tee things up for the meeting. We work with Laura, our managing director, just to help guide the process. But this is the forum, and your voice is what makes actions happen here around the table today. All right. Our first item that we have is consent agenda items. And we have several items that we've been working on since we were last together that I just want to present to everyone. And I'll just go through these and then we can go into deeper detail if necessary. And we put things on the consent agenda just so that routine business can be moved in a quick movement. And then we can spend more time talking about items of importance to engage everyone here. So we have our minutes from the January 2022 meeting at the first of the year, quarter one treasurer's report. And then we have commissioners that are being advanced forward for our Excellence in Ecological Restoration Program and then acceptance of new partners. So if we can move Laura to the next slide, we'll just go through these in detail. Emily Roycewig from Open Lands is our treasurer, and they were having a special public relations meeting today on one of their projects at Open Lands. And so I am going to just go through this for everyone. So this is our statement of assets, liabilities, and net assets. And what you're seeing here on the balance sheet here is in reserves. We are solidly strong and with $588,114.66 within our funds there. For the month, we saw dues and sponsorships come in grateful and many grants and donations, which we're grateful for. And so that ended up adding at the end of the month of March, an additional $4,187.77 into our fund. So that is where we sit at the end of the first quarter of the fiscal year. Okay. We also want to acknowledge, next slide. These are the commissioners for the Excellence in Ecological Restoration Program that are being advanced. And this is led by two co-chairs. Julianne Mason from the Forest Preserve District of Will County is new to the commission, and Lori Ryan from the McHenry County Conservation District has been on the commission, but moving into the role as co-chair, again, aligned with several other professionals within our natural resources team, Nicholas Fuller from the Forest Preserve of DuPage County, Matt Olson from Lake County Forest Preserve, Dan Sandes from Lake County Forest Preserve, Sarah, hopefully I'm not pronouncing these names incorrectly, Skowronski from Kimley Horn GSG Consultants, and Sarah White from Northwestern University. And they will be serving to review our Excellence in Ecological Restoration applications, which we'll talk a little bit more later on in the program. Next slide. Welcoming a new partner, Edgewater Environmental Coalition, to the council. And with that, I will take a motion on those items on the consent agenda for approval. So move Paul. Do I have a second? Second by Ted. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, motion by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. All right, the consent agenda has been approved. We also want to thank outgoing steering committee member, Mike Lester from Magnolia Land Partners, has served on the steering committee for many years, serving in the role of treasurer to help give us a solid financial founding as we've gone through transition. And Mike has been a great partner with us and leading. And so we want to wish him best as he rotates off the steering committee and thank him for his efforts. We also have some announced retirements that we want to share our thanks and many appreciation and best successes as they refine their new roles and their freedoms. And as I like to say, as they be able to join the other side and have a voice that can just speak without limitation. So Ralph Schultz from the Forest Preserve District of Will County. Cherie Fisher from the U.S. Forest Service. Cherie's with us today. And then Michael Redmer from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. All will be retiring if in the next couple weeks, next couple months. So we want to wish you very well. And thank you so much for your engagement with the Alliance for these many years. All right. Now I'm going to turn it over to Nora back here at CMAP, and she's going to highlight us on the Climate Action Plan update.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. So we want to thank you so much for being here in our office. I hope you enjoy the meeting space. If you don't know, there are restrooms out the exit and to the right a little bit. So if, you can ask the front desk for help if you get lost. And I'm also hoping that the weather holds up and you can enjoy the rooftop later. So it's quite a special gem. I joined as a CMAP representative to the executive committee a few meetings ago. And so I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Nora Beck. I'm a principal at CMAP in our regional policy and implementation division. I'm trained as an urban planner, but I've been working on environmental policy and data resources at the agency for quite some time. I lead our relatively new climate mitigation program, but I have deep roots in water resource planning. So today I'm here to talk about some ongoing work that we have. One of the main projects that we in our climate mitigation portfolio is the development of a comprehensive climate action plan for Greater Chicago. We've made really great progress on this project, but we're also at a critical juncture. So today I want to provide an overview of the work, an update on where we are with the plan itself, and then touch on what's at stake due to shifting federal support. Then I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Kelsey Pudlock, and we thought we'd spend some time talking about the role of the capture of carbon emissions from trees, wetlands, and other ecosystems, and how that plays a role in the CCAP itself. And we also have a few discussion questions. So hopefully we can fit it all in and we'll keep moving. But if you do have questions, let me know. Laura, maybe we could advance a couple of slides. I sort of got ahead. One more. Okay. Oh, actually one back. All right, that's perfect. So we are engaged in a unique partnership with the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus and the Northwestern Indiana Metropolitan Planning Organization, the sister agency in Indiana, the NRPC, Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission. We came together to respond to the US EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, or CPRG. This was a program that was launched through the Inflation Reduction Act. It's a nationwide program. It has two components. There's a planning phase and an implementation phase. The planning phase is designed to start state level and major metropolitan region climate action plans across the nation. And almost everybody signed up except for 4 states. So that's really exciting. So everybody's in the process of doing these plans. And then the US EPA offered another pot of funding to help with implementation. So we are in the midst of working on the deliverables. And one of them is a comprehensive climate action plan. It needs to address all major sources of emissions and develop a strategy for reducing those emissions that is in line with what at the time were national climate goals. We're just going to talk about international climate goals right now. So we're working on that, and the state is also doing this. So they're doing a parallel planning effort and to develop a statewide comprehensive climate action plan. And they also received a sizable implementation grant that you might be aware of, about $430 million to help implement climate action in the state. So we could go to the next. Oh, this is our geography. I didn't touch on it at all. So we extend into Wisconsin. We go into northwestern Indiana. You know, we're not entirely the Chicago wilderness boundary, but we're getting really close to it. So the work is already delivering some major insights, and we can flip to the next slide. And one of that is just a clear picture of where our region's greenhouse gas emissions are coming from, mainly transportation, buildings, and industry. We cataloged 152 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent coming from this 13 county geography in 2020. It makes sense that we have emissions in these big 3 sectors. We have both a cold and hot weather climate. We have relatively older housing stock, and we're also a national transportation and manufacturing hub. And so we contribute a lot of emissions to the national portfolio. In the next slide, you can see that we've mapped emissions by county, and this shows us 2 important things. If we could flip to the next slide. One, that every county contributes to the emissions in our region. And then 2, that solutions need to be tailored, not one size fits all to address what's happening here. I'll flip to the next slide. The planning process is also helping to make international climate goals more tangible for our region. You know, we hear about net zero and avoiding the worst impacts of climate change. through work with our steering committee and our working groups is involved in this plan, we've been able to translate that into what it means for the Chicago region to be a valuable partner in climate action. So this includes figuring out what our share of greenhouse gas emission reduction needs to be to hit those at the time national goals. So we adopted an economy-wide target of 80 to 85% emission reduction from 2005 levels in gross greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later in the slide deck, but you know, this means that it encompasses all of the sectors that we have in the region. So including industry, energy, transportation, buildings, agriculture, water, wastewater, and waste. This comprehensive approach recognizes that the emissions must be reduced across the board. This target also reflects sort of the reality of our smaller geography in light of the national scale. So we have a huge industrial sector. We are contributing products that are used throughout the nation. On the flip side, we don't have a ton of carbon sequestration potential compared to other parts of the country. And so we're trying to balance that in this goal. And that's how we ended up at the 80 to 85% gross reduction. As we get further, let me skip ahead. So in the next slide, you can see that we've been harnessing the expertise of the region to help us determine what strategies could be appropriate for each sector. We know it's going to require a range of strategies as shown here, you know, electrifying buildings and promoting public transit, walking and biking, and increasing natural carbon storage. Through a modeling process, we will provide information on what strategies are most effective and at what implementation rates we need to reach these goals. And this information is also going to be tailored based on each county's conditions. So we're building this modeling process based on each county in the geography. We are not assuming the same rates of implementation across the board, as we know that some strategies are going to be more effective in some places over others. And as we get further along in the process, we'll be able to define just how much of this work rests on our state and local shoulders and how much of it requires federal action and potentially emerging technologies. The next slide. We just want to reiterate, we're not just doing this because of the climate targets. The strategies we're identifying will also help address challenges that we hear about every day, like high energy costs, air pollution, poor transportation access, and flooding. These strategies can bring benefits to every county, whether that's better health, lower bills, or stronger infrastructure. And so the plan we're hoping that the plan speaks to these core issues that our region cares about and can inform decision-making on how climate action can also advance other regional priorities. In the next slide, just to quickly summarize what we'll get at the end. So the plan will establish a reduction goal for greenhouse gases. It'll estimate the effectiveness of different strategies. And through that, we're hoping to distill our regional and local priorities. We'll also be able to analyze those community benefits or co-benefits. And we're going to provide all of that information at the county scale to inform local action. So in the next slide, you'll see our timeline. We are more than halfway through our project. Oh, wow. Maybe, yeah, there might be some animation. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. So with the help of our steering committee and working groups, we've established guiding principles to guide the plan. We've created that greenhouse gas inventory for the planning area. We've set that reduction goal to contribute to international climate goals, and we've identified strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and avoid potential negative impacts. We have started estimating the effectiveness of those strategies through a modeling effort, and Laura, maybe the next slide will, yeah, okay, cool. So we're right in the process of estimating how these strategies can help us hit those targets. But now we're encountering a challenge. So recent executive orders and court challenges have created some uncertainty with the funding source that we're relying on to finish this work. The funding isn't gone, it is at risk, and that puts the plan and its impact in jeopardy. If funding is terminated, you know, we're trying to find some backup funding supplies, but if we can't do that, we're likely to complete only the early modeling work. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of just where we are in the process. And so if funding were terminated today, for example, we would not be able to validate the modeling results with our stakeholders, which we think is pretty crucial to completing the plan. We want to refine those strategies based on their input and assess how these strategies can deliver on community benefits. So we're continuing to do what we can, and so far so good, but I just wanted you all to be aware of the risk that we're encountering at the moment. So with that high level overview and status update, I'd like to turn it over to Kelsey Pudlock. And she's leading our policy development for this work. And we thought it would make sense to dive into the carbon sequestration portion of the plan, as that's a key strategy. And so we're talking about the natural carbon sequestration in this conversation. We're not talking about emerging technologies at the moment. Thanks, Carrie.
Yeah. And can we just advance to the next slide really quick? Just to give you a broad overview of the sectors that are covered by the plan. This is our full set: transportation, buildings, industry, agriculture, waste, water and wastewater, carbon sequestration, and energy. So just keep that in mind as I go through the carbon sequestration specifics. So, oh, it's on. I'll just talk a little louder. There we go. Okay. Okay, so to estimate existing carbon sequestration, we use state level data from US EPA's state inventory tool, downscaled to reflect local land use patterns based on the proportions of land use types within each county of the planning area. So with this downscaled data, we estimated reductions associated with activities such as afforestation, deforestation, and other land management practices. Of the 2.74 million metric tons of emissions sequestered in 2020, the vast majority, roughly 91%, comes from the uptake of storage of carbon in our region's trees and wetlands. And then there's a smaller but still important contribution that's coming from the conversion of vacant land to forest or emissions reduced from the conservation or restoration of agriculture. Next slide, please. So the map on the right shows the amount of carbon sequestered by county. Cook County sequesters the most carbon, followed by Will, Lake, and McHenry counties in Illinois. With a significant portion of the carbon sequestered from trees and wetlands, we suspect that these counties are elevated based on the size, based on their overall size, as well as the land holdings within each. So with Cook County, it's the largest county of all 13, and they also have the most public land holdings dedicated to protected open space. However, we also know that 81% of the region is developed, which can really work against carbon storage and sequestration. So next slide. So to just reflect back on the regional reduction target that Nora had talked about, we're aiming to reduce gross emissions by 80 to 85% by 2050. So when we're talking about gross emissions, we're referring to the total amount of GHGs emitted by all sources within the defined area of the 13 counties, and without counting for any offsets, so such as carbon storage and sequestration. And we know that while sequestration is not working toward that reduction target, we mentioned that there are a lot of co-benefits, and we still want to set a carbon sequestration goal that aims to really maximize the contributions that can occur within the region. So again, I just wanted to state that, creating and maintaining healthy and connected ecosystems not only helps reduce emissions, but it can also provide numerous of co-benefits. As Nora mentioned, air and water quality, public health, and then increased resilience to extreme weather events. So keeping all of that in mind, on the next slide, just wanted to talk through how we can achieve the natural carbon sequestration within the region and what that potential really means. So to achieve all of those benefits and recognizing that we're working within a pretty developed region, we know that our ability to reduce emissions and store carbon really relies on the health and connectivity of the region's ecosystems and as well as their ability to expand. So stressors like development, climate change impacts can cause further fragmentation and degrade ecosystem health and really threatening the storage potential that our region can provide. So making sure that ecosystems are healthy, are more biodiverse will really ensure that we can store all of the carbon that we have potential to hold. So we also recognize that the inventory may not be fully accounting for all of the ecosystems within the greater Chicago region. As I mentioned earlier, it's covering forests or tree canopy, wetlands, and then the cropland conversion. So we know that research has shown that grasslands and prairies, which are very common within our region, can be just as effective if these are restored to their healthy, connected environments and can provide a sink for carbon as do like new trees or areas that historically hadn't supported those ecosystems. So given the prevalence of those ecosystems in our region, we wanted to make sure that we take a more comprehensive approach and outlook as we look into the future and really try to grasp and have a good understanding of the potential and setting that hopefully ambitious goal for the region. Next slide, please. So to do this and really ground our goal in sound data, we will be using the Nature Conservancy's NatureBase tool, which is a web platform quantifying the mitigation impacts across the globe. The platform is a result of a collaborative effort between scientists, developers at the Nature Conservancy and numerous organizations across the environmental sector and academia. So it uses peer-reviewed scientific data, and the tool with that, if you could go to the next slide, please. Thanks. It shows users the emission reduction potential across forests, croplands, wetlands, and grassland ecosystems. And then alongside, it also shows the natural climate solutions, as they call them, or actions that we can implement to achieve that potential. So there are over 20 actions within this tool focused on those or that revolve around those four ecosystems, and then with a focus on protecting, managing, and restoring nature so that it can help us reduce emissions and store carbon. So the two maps here on this slide offer a glimpse into a couple of these actions. So the map on the left shows that there's a significant potential for storing carbon in the soil through practices like cover cropping and crop rotation. And then the one on the right highlights that reforestation within the region. But then also it's showing, a bigger context of our region and how that compared to other surrounding areas like northern Wisconsin, southern Illinois, southern Indiana. There are some areas that have more potential given that they're a little bit more undeveloped and support for forest cover. So on the next slide, and I'll just say that this is an overview of the various objectives and strategies that we're considering, really using the NatureBase tool as a guidepost, given that they have 20 actions built into that tool. But we're recommending actions to increase and expand existing natural lands, manage land more sustainably, and increase carbon storage of agricultural lands. So for our region, this means restoring and protecting forests, prairies, and wetlands, increasing our tree canopy, transitioning underutilized land to native landscapes and ecosystems, Managing land sustainably means promoting infill development in strategic areas while also promoting conservation design in more rural areas. And then increasing carbon storage of agricultural lands means using land management practices and policies to improve soil and ecosystem health so that they can uptake and store more carbon over time. So that's a brief overview of all of the objectives and strategies that we're considering within the plan. And we have a few discussion questions now that hopefully we can ask you all and have a engaging conversation. So on the next slide, we have 3 questions. First of all, we'd like to know how familiar you are with the nature-based tool. Has anyone heard of it before today? Okay. Just as a follow-up, I'm curious, has it been used in other work that you're involved in?
Yes, I was actually on the advisory committee for developing the tool, but our staff has used it at the Wetlands Initiative as well.
Okay, well, yeah, as I mentioned, we certainly saw some limitations in our existing GHG inventory, and through stakeholder conversations, realized that having that grassland component was important. So we were really trying to find something that we would be able to account for that. So nature-based is the tool that we came across that allowed for us to incorporate the majority of the ecosystems included in our region. So
Who owns nature-based? Where is the source? Is that the Nature Conservancy? Okay, so that is their product, and it's done nationally across
globally. Mhm. Yeah, and the data, and for our modeling effort, we're only getting down to the county level. And this tool, it's challenging to find data sets that are consistent or available across all 13 counties. So this tool was one that does have that extent. Are there any other tools out there that might be similar that we should be aware of or take a look at?
Can you remind us what you're looking for in a tool? Like, are you looking for protected landscapes, different ecosystem services? Like, what data are you looking for?
We're really looking to be able to quantify the emissions that could be reduced or, sequestered and stored over time, and to be able to make that quantification across multiple ecosystem types that are present within the region.
I was just reading a research publication. It's a couple of years old, and I cannot remember what they used to quantify it, but they were looking at habitat on roadsides and how the habitat sequestered the carbon. And so I'm happy to look that up and share that with you.
Sure. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Have you looked at the INVEST model from Stanford University? INVEST is an acronym for something, Valuing Ecosystem Services Tool, I think. But it includes a carbon sequestration module in it. So it's a GIS-based model. I think it's intended for a smaller scale than this, but some of the assumptions, it's all associated with land cover. So you might be able to take that, at least map it, see how it compares.
Yeah, thank you so much.
If you wanted to drill down at a finer scale, there are some regionally developed models. The University of Illinois Department of Atmospheric Sciences has an integrated science assessment model that integrates physiologically based mechanisms for carbon uptake. And then they scale that globally, but each grid is small. I think it's smaller than a county level.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But then there's also, I think, NDVI databases and all the tools out of UCAR, which hopefully they're still around.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for sharing all of these additional resources. We'll certainly want to take a look at them, and if, at the very least, be able to use them to validate some of the results and make those comparisons so that we have a good understanding of what we're seeing. So the second question is, what are the critical implementation opportunities and barriers associated with the strategies to increase sequestration?
Maybe Laura, we could flip back to the last slide. I'm just thinking about how we're structuring the plan around these three core objectives. Are there things that you think the plan really needs to speak to about the opportunities and challenges in this space?
I think one thing that would be helpful to speak to is when clean energy projects could come into conflict with natural climate solutions, and how municipalities should be thinking about land use strategy in relation to getting the most bang for our buck and not developing in certain areas. I think that would be really, really helpful.
Thank you. Okay.
But there is research. There's that gap.
Perform that. That was so good, Ted. I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned that. So just talking about how not only the sequestration potential of nature-based solutions, but their potential to reduce energy consumption to begin with, and are we looking at that potential, and what would we need for that? We need mature trees, and so how do we cover that in the plan? We haven't yet, so I'm glad you mentioned it. Thank you.
Remotely. Okay.
I'm just pointing out that one of the national conversations is about housing and the need to increase, especially affordable housing everywhere, almost at all cost. And there are efforts to reduce red tape, and those are all well-minded, but just because land is vacant doesn't mean it's not being used for something. And so there could be tension between nature-based solutions and the desperate need for affordable housing. And so you're getting at it with your, under that blue heading of infill development and land management and zoning, but I think it's something that needs to be explicitly addressed.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, actually in Massachusetts, they've kind of paired housing and land protection together, which could be an interesting suggestion on a kind of statewide level. I also think there are lots of municipalities, and there was some legislation on the state level trying to help with this. Lots of municipalities actually ban native landscaping in different ways. So how are we looking at zoning law and, instead of banning native plantings, supporting them, whether it's through kind of like the clean energy rebate programs or things of that nature would be great.
John, and then a few more questions I know that you've got, we've got another presentation on the agenda, but this is really great.
Yes, thank you.
And John.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I think one of the unique barriers is that a lot of this is so siloed through different municipalities. So they deal with zoning, conservation easements is somewhat of an IRS question. Rewilding ag land, it's a county issue most of the time. Tree plantings, native landscaping, it kind of crosses a lot of barriers. So any kind of legislation, and really it should come from the state, ideally from Congress, to de-silo a lot of this authority, to say, look, it's in our best interest to do all of this, but we have to go the Army Corps through, if we're talking about navigable waterways, the wetlands are sort of fuzzy right now. So just some clarification of like who's in charge of what policy would be very helpful to reducing the barriers to say, look, this is a local issue, hyper-local, is it state, is it national, is it regional? And then to kind of give authority to say a bioregional entity, such a thing doesn't exist, but maybe CMAP could do this and say, look, let's see how we can break down these barriers. And the comment about, regulation, stuff like that, that was addressed in this new book, Abundance. And it's not necessarily a barrier, but it's one of those de facto things that always exist that could be addressed in a better way. And I think just the de-siloing concept would be a good place to start.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, CMAP, for you leading the way on this climate action plan and providing us an update. I think really critical that we've talked about at the Alliance is identifying, having that source to which we're all singing from the same song sheet, so to speak, and so that we can measure. And I know the Alliance has a lot of data to share on our hub, where we geographically GIS data have been putting information in, and those layers definitely would be something to look into our partners to continue to provide your information into the Chicago Wilderness Alliance hub, because that's definitely demonstrating, protected lands or opportunity areas and things that would align with that. The other thing that we've been working on, and great to see that nature-based solutions are being integrated, because that's really critical. That's where we stand, and be willing to help you in any process or policy development that you're working on. Understanding a lot of our materials are Western based currently, and we've also been engaging in native-led climate summit, learning from the wisdom that's come on another perspective. And we've been working on bringing communities, underrepresented communities, to the table to share their thoughts and approaches on actionable items. And so as we develop that too, we hope that we can work in partnership to continue moving that forward. Wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to turn it over now to Joel Brammeyer from the Alliance for the Great Lakes, and it's going to provide us all his wisdom and knowledge of what's going on federally.
Afraid I'm going to bring the room down a bit. Sorry. No, I appreciate being invited here by Laura and Victoria to provide a quick update on what we see happening at the federal level. I'm coming to you, of course, from the Alliance for the Great Lakes. So coming at this from very much a Great Lakes and clean water perspective, not going to have as much knowledge on land conservation as I'm sure is very rich in this room, but we'll do my best. And I'm happy to try to answer questions. We have in addition to all of our staff throughout the Great Lakes region, we have a federal relations director in DC on the Hill many days of the week. And so I have a decent window into what's going on with Congress. So what I'd like to do is just provide some comments. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm tall, so I'm kind of crouching down here towards the mic. I'll try to provide an overview of what we know is going on at the agency level and with congressional appropriations, and then talk a little bit about what I think has made the Great Lakes funding world somewhat insulated from some of these changes, And I'm happy to take questions or be part of a discussion after that if we have time. So first, I want to just extend, I think it's important to acknowledge the disruption, intentional disruption and chaos that has been caused to federal agencies over the last 3 months, and just extend my own I guess, sympathy for that, but also just a recognition that the kinds of changes that we've seen so far have been done, as I said, intentionally to kind of sow chaos and create an unstable environment for our federal workforce. And I know that's been very unpleasant, including for some people in this room. I think that what's happening now is that the administration is moving from a mode of sort of shock and awe towards one of planned reductions in force. So the agencies, the federal agencies, the ones we follow most closely, which would be US EPA, NOAA, and the Army Corps, to greater or lesser extents, are going through processes of having to submit reorganization plans to the Office of Management and Budget in the White House. And there's conversations, active conversations right now about those changes, which are called reductions in force, among other changes that are being proposed. So those negotiations are happening right now among the between the agencies in the White House. That means you're going to see continued reductions in staff levels that are going to unfold over the summer, and these are ones that are being done as far as in a lot of cases by the book in the way that they should be done, sort of. How an administration has the ability to make an objective evaluation of an agency and make choices about what it wants to do, which is different from what's happened, in the couple of months after inauguration. Of those, the ones that maybe some of you have seen this, NOAA's proposed changes were leaked. There are some pretty drastic cuts on the table for NOAA. I realize this is water focused and not so much land conservation focused, but we're talking about things like dramatic cutbacks or eliminations of the Sea Grant program, elimination of the Integrated Ocean Observing System, which would have an impact on water monitoring in the Great Lakes Basin as well, elimination of climate research and the associated staff, on down the line. So that information has been leaked. None of it's official at this point. So what I'm giving you is a mixture of facts, opinions, and speculation, just to be clear. EPA's reorganization plans have been held much more close. We don't really know a lot about that. What I can speculate on is some of you may have seen that there was an appointment of a regional administrator to Region 5 EPA recently. And as of, I think like last week, I can't remember when this happened, I believe all the EPA regions now have appointed administrators. So speculation about whether there's going to be any consolidation of EPA offices has kind of been tamped down since each of the regions now has an administrator. But again, it's speculation at this point. One thing I can tell you is that the Great Lakes National Program Office, which runs the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, among other things, is bound by statute to be located in a Great Lakes state. So that office, I realize that law doesn't always matter to everyone, but by law, that office would have to be located in a Great Lakes state, even if Region 5 EPA location was altered or diminished. So that's all not great news and just a reality of what we're dealing with right now. I do want to share that just a bit about the working timeline for Congress, because I think it's really important as Chicago Wilderness thinks about how to engage with this. And you probably already have, but right now, one of the big questions right now is how much the administration will actually listen to Congress and its decisions about funding, right? So just to briefly walk through the federal appropriations process. Right now, House of Representatives subcommittees on the Appropriations Committee are having conversations about how to build out their sections of federal appropriations bills for fiscal year 26. So there's communication happening about that right now, getting down to the individual program level, like the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, like NOAA programs, Forest Service programs. And so after that, there will be that information, those drafts will be laddered up into the broader appropriations committees. And you would expect the House typically acts first. You would expect to see a House appropriations bill being passed by the end of June or by mid-July. And then the Senate is working on this at the same time. But the House's bill is going to likely mimic or follow more closely what the president's budget says. So the president is going to release the first draft of his budget, we think, within the next 2 weeks. And then there'll be more detail to follow after that. The House will probably, the House's appropriations bill will probably follow a lot of what the president's budget says. And then the Senate's bill will probably be not as beholden to what the White House budget looks like. Then after recess in the summer, they'll come back and try to negotiate this between the Senate and the House. The upshot of it is that if CW wants to engage in this right now, it would be, and we can talk about that if it's relevant. It would be great to be getting information about specific programs that are important to the Alliance to the House subcommittee staff now. And I'll leave it at that. We can talk more about that if it's relevant. Another point to know is that water programs generally appear to be better protected than other environmental programs. So climate, of course, is on the block. Anything that says environmental justice, equity, disadvantaged communities, which is actually a statutory category in the Clean Water Act, those words are being targeted. Water programs, though, more generally are being somewhat protected. So things like the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, the state revolving funds, the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, all those are up for reauthorization this year. They're being protected partially because there's great advocacy around water programs, partially because the president said he was committed to clean water during his campaign, but also because there are constituencies beyond environmentalists supporting those programs. Municipalities, water utilities have been very active in pushing back on proposed cuts to those programs. So water programs, unlike some others, are potentially in a better position than other programs. I just want to touch on a little bit about the kind of the way, and I was really glad to see the map of Chicago Wilderness's geography or CMAP's geography, and which I know parallels closely what Chicago Wilderness is. Because one of the questions I was asked is why have the Great Lakes programs been so well protected and so well funded over the years? And there's a big coalition from the ENGO side that works on that called the Healing Our Waters Coalition. I won't go into too much detail about that, but that coalition has been highly effective at building political support for federal funding for a few reasons. One is that there has been a longstanding consensus around top priority issues across the Great Lakes region. There has been then a big effort to build political buy-in from both parties across the Great Lakes region to get ongoing support for those programs. And there's been a delivery of outcomes to congressional districts across the Great Lakes region that are held by both parties. And that's been a lot of that work is what has led to the ongoing support for Great Lakes environmental funding programs over the years. And that's why I think, and some other folks think, that will likely continue under this administration and Congress, even as we see some major cuts elsewhere. The other thing, as I was reflecting on the geography of CW, I was thinking about sort of how that might translate to the CW Alliance. And one of the challenges, candidly, that's out there right now is that most of the congressional districts in the Chicago Wilderness geography are held by Democrats. And while we're a nonpartisan organization, we seek to build bipartisan coalitions to get things done. You have to have people from both parties in order to build bipartisan coalitions. And so it's really important to be thinking about how to find the places within CW's landscape that can be where you can carry the message about the importance of this work to people in both parties who will hear it and who will share their voice with Washington right now. And that's something that there are, I know, limited opportunities to do, but we can get into that if you want to talk about that. I'm not sure how much you want to have that conversation right now. And then I know we're like already over time. I think I'm keeping to my time limit, but okay, cool. I did just want to share I'll close out with this and then we can move to Q&A. I think that it is one of the reasons, there are just kind of two takeaways from the Great Lakes experience. One is that when we were able to tell both the economic and the human stories about the value of this work using real data to back it up, that has a tremendous impact with audiences that otherwise wouldn't be involved in conservation work, wouldn't be involved in environmental work. And that's shown up time and time again. There's really great evidence for that. And then the last thing I'll say about why I think this region continues to have a lot of potential to back up or to continue to push back on some of the proposed cuts and changes that we're seeing is that our region, at least in the Great Lakes region, has a great track record of actually coming together and setting shared priorities with people from both parties across a large geography, even when the federal government wasn't actually stepping up in the lead. And that's something, I could go issue by issue, but I won't right now. That's something to think about, the importance of which constituents in the Chicago Wilderness Alliance region are able to step up and really demonstrate that they're willing to commit to a consensus agenda and make that agenda known to Washington and take the lead again, even in a vacuum of federal leadership. I'll stop there. And I know that there's like tons of programs and specific funding pots and all that stuff. And I'm happy to, be part of a discussion about that if we have time.
Great. Thank you, Joel. Appreciate the update. Any questions that anyone has? Paul, please.
So on the point about finding Republican voices potentially in Washington, the elected level, and looking at our region here, I'm wondering if you know or have any thoughts on to what degree either of Indiana's U.S. senators fit that description.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So my understanding is that, well, first of all, on one of the senators, Todd Young, is where I would be looking. And Senator Young is known to be sort of empathetic to conservation, right? Somebody who's been engaged in Northwest Indiana, is aware of Northwest Indiana's sort of all of its assets, right? Not just its economic assets, but its environmental assets. And I would be looking to Senator Young and bringing a unified voice from CW members, for example, to Senator Young about specific programs. The other person, though, is Governor Braun. Governor Braun is historically is a Republican who acknowledges climate change, has been worked as a senator to be part of a conservative climate caucus, is a major landowner, is very into trees planting, I understand. And so I would be looking at governors also who can be a voice in DC to other, help that message get sent in a way that's going to be heard.
Oh, John.
Thank you. As of today, we're losing a strong advocate in Illinois through Senator Durbin's retirement. Do you see someone from this state filling the gap there? And so who might that be?
I can't answer that. I mean, I legally can't answer that. I'm not allowed to have an opinion. Senator Durbin has been an incredible leader for the Great Lakes. He has been a champion for Great Lakes programs, the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, the issue of plastic pollution, invasive species, often behind the scenes, often been there at the finish line, working the Senate floor, doing things that don't get headlines, but get major programs across the finish line. And so it is a big loss. He's a senior. I don't know where he is on seniority on appropriations, but he is close to the top in the minority right now. So it is a big loss. I just can't answer about potential candidates from Illinois. It's going to be an interesting thing to watch. But I think being aware of what we're losing as a region in terms of having a senior appropriator in the Senate, that's going to be a big gap to fill.
Well, it's important to note that he is actually simply not running for reelection.
He has 18
So
more
he's
months,
got-
yes.
So this budget, I mean, he's neck deep in it and he's going to stay in it. And actually the next one too. And the answer on the candidates is basically all of them.
Great question. Yes, please.
Hey, Joel. My question is about GLRI.
Yeah.
So I know you were mentioning that water seems to be sort of a topic that is of broad interest, but GLRI funds so much more than just water related things. Do you foresee that there are going to be changes to what is funded under GLRI? And do you think funding levels are going to go down?
What I know, so what I know is that there's a bipartisan group of members of Congress right now who are sending a letter to the Interior and Environment Approach Subcommittee requesting $475 million for the GLRI in fiscal year 26. That's good. That request has been made before. It won't go that high, but that's good. And that letter will get a lot of support. What I've heard is that in the back and forth between EPA, Region 5 and headquarters, is that the GLRI is, quote, protected and GLNPO is protected in some way. I don't know what that means in terms of a funding level. In terms of program priorities, you're probably all aware, so many of you are aware that the GLRI's most recent action plan 4 includes climate priorities. It includes environmental justice priorities. As of today, that action plan is still on EPA's website. I cannot predict what's going to happen in the future. They just got a regional administrator last week, Ann Vogel, formerly of Ohio EPA, and the Governor DeWine's office in Ohio. And so I couldn't speculate on that, but I guess I'll speculate broadly, Noreen, that this EPA Region 5 and this GLNPO is not going to be sort of starting new funding programs on climate priorities. Yeah, I wish I had more sort of factual, things I could definitively say, but we're watching GLRI Action Plan 4 because we think it's an at-risk plan right now. So.
No, great question. I just got back a couple of weeks ago. I was in Washington, DC for the National Recreation and Park Association. And again, many places across the country, we represent both Republicans and Democrats. So that bipartisan issue important. I mean, last year we had the Explore Act that was approved. And one of the things through messaging within our space was that what we do, there is an admiration and a shared, that's one thing they can agree to and things that they can't. So one of the strategies that was used is also to align with the outdoor recreation industry. And again, you talk about the economics, the gross domestic product of how the outdoor recreation industry is now evaluated. And that speaks because when we're looking at opportunities for whether it be boating or whether it be camping or hiking or all these activities, the tourism and economics without healthy places that we protect and preserved has a direct impact to that. And so I think what we do is we think on a regional level, there is great support, but yet a way to find those, something we all can agree on, right? So again, I think your point and appreciate the feedback that you're getting, but to align with partners and spread the word and maybe not just the like to like, but there's others in the space that can help us too.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Susan Ragishis has her hand raised and would like to add something. Susan, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, I'll also put myself on video so I'm not so rude. Hi, guys. Thank you very much. Have you heard anything about the Inflation Reduction Act or the Jobs Act, and if those are going to be fulfilled with the contracts that they promised? I know that it sounded like even Chicago Wilderness had something wrapped up in the Inflation Reduction Act.
Try to answer this very briefly. So the Inflation Reduction Act and the IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, both authorized and appropriated funding for a variety of activities that are connected to a lot of what we all do in this room. We have a Great Lakes Restoration Initiative grant with the words environmental justice in the title that is sort of sitting out there in limbo right now from the IIJA. legally, our understanding is that the IIJA funds and the IRA funds mostly should be available to grantees if they were contracted, if the funds were contracted and obligated already. That's the posture that we've taken as of the court decisions that came out 2 weeks ago, or one specific court decision. Another was actually stayed on appeal after that, but there was a major decision that should free up most of the ability of obligated grantees to spend those grants as of that decision 2 weeks ago. Whether that actually means that, agency staff will cooperate with you on administering that grant, I don't know. We sent our communication to EPA saying we are going to proceed with this work as outlined in, this decision and this agreement, and have not heard anything. So in response, which I imagine mimics the experience that many of you have had if you sent similar communications. So I guess legally, the money should be being able to be spent. In practice, we're not getting a lot of, I can say from our experience and from what we're hearing from other partners, is we're not getting a lot of direct communication about that from agency staff right now. There is a chance, by the way, there is a way for Congress to go back and claw back money that's been obligated. But it would require again, if you're doing things by the book, which we should be, and respecting the separation of powers, there is a way that Congress can claw back obligated funds that have not been spent. But that, again, would require an act of Congress, is my understanding, to do that, and is rare.
And in your opinion, do you think that it would have any impact, like ASLA National has sent a letter to Congress regarding the funding? Would it help to have a joint letter? Are letters helping, or is it just basically we keep our fingers crossed?
I think shared advocacy is always important. I think it's important to identify which stakeholders and parties are going to be heard best by your congressional targets. And so, like making sure that, if you're speaking to a member of Congress who has like specific things in their district that they care about, has, businesses or, maybe things associated with outdoor recreation or agriculture, making sure that you're activating folks with those voices that are going to be heard clearly by whoever you're targeting is important.
Is there anybody else online that had questions? Anybody in the room here? Thank you so much for the information and sharing what you know and your expertise and helping us guide our ways through these challenging times. But again, I think the message is to stay at it, keep up the good fight, and to connect and make those relationships and keep telling your story, member districts and organizations of the work that we're doing. So thank you. All right, we are going to now go into committee reports. And the first one back to advocacy is our government relations community. I don't know if Alicia
is not with us, so I'm going to give a quick
Okay.
update. And I do want to thank you again, Joel. And I wanted to thank this room because our 2025 action alerts system has been utilized and implemented at a higher rate this first quarter than we've seen before, but we also have a GLRI advocacy post that was shared from Save the Dunes that is ready to go out tomorrow. So we are really grateful for our partners for submitting those, and Lake will drop into the chat just a link on how to do that. But so I did kind of put a list of what we've put out so far, but we are also working on a cafe. And Joel, if you're interested in ever coming back to us with a Chicago Wilderness Cafe, we're kind of doing a baseline civics engagement opportunity, understanding of what the congressional budget process means. And we're working with Alicia Sanchez and Michelle Uding and others on developing that for a future date. So stay tuned. And then we'll move into CAPN.
Thank you for reminding me. Before you do that, yes, Victoria, appreciate that. We've had new people join us since we gathered and did introductions. So if you did not introduce yourself prior, please go ahead and we'll start with Emily.
Okay, use a microphone.
Emily Reisberg, Vice President of Conservation and Policy at Open Lands and Treasurer.
Kathy, do you want
Kathy Bruck from Atrium.
to? Is there a few people came in back?
In the back room.
Hi, I'm Erin Hagan from the Field Museum.
Hi, Becky Nicodemus with NOAA's Office for Coastal Management.
And is there anybody online? And we have one more here.
Jessica Rudnick with the U.S. Forest Service for a few more days.
Chris Kraus with Shirley Hines Land Trust. I jumped on a few minutes after the meeting started.
Thank you, Chris.
Vince Mosco with Friends of Hackmatack and Hay and Associates and Secretary.
Thank you.
All right, terrific. So now we'll go back and we'll do the native led or climate action plan. Sorry. Climate action plan for nature. We're going to go ahead and move to that. Laura.
So we're pleased to report that we were able to begin our phase 2 work in April with Collaborative Connections. And Collaborative Connections will be leading us to update the climate action plan for people in nature to incorporate a co-design process that hears from more voices around the region, as Elizabeth alluded to earlier. And those of you who are familiar with the climate action plan, what the first step will be understanding the scope of what will be happening and understanding the history and the current reality of the Chicago Wilderness Alliance region. Then there will be a visioning process that will be led through this co-design team to vision what they want to see in place in the Chicago Wilderness region moving forward. Next, identifying what are those barriers to moving this vision forward, what are some of the root causes, and then what innovative and substantial actions will deal with the underlying contradictions and move us towards this vision. Finally, what will be our specific measurable accomplishments for the first year. The format that has been laid out for this co-design team is to co-create the values that they hold as working together to steward the climate action plan, and incorporating and reflecting on previous regional efforts, planning efforts, and resources that have been created for CAPN and other work that's happening in the region as well. And then creating a project timeline for incorporating this work. This current scope of work will begin now in Q2 and will wrap up at the end of the year in December. And so they will be also collectively crafting the planning process and the planning arc, scheduling the sessions, and creating alignment with the values that will be part of the process that will be moving this forward. And then finally, there will be a co-authored final plan with all those who participate in its creation, and we'll represent CAPN to the public and including other partners in the media as this is developed. Anything that I left out? That
Yeah,
Todd or
and I too, and I misstepped because I keep referring back to what was existing of a climate action plan for people in nature. And we've been intentional that we've removed the plan. It's climate action for people in nature with CAPN, in essence. So the convening of the voices and the representation of all of that is really part of this phase 2. And I just want to thank all of our partners, the core key stakeholders that were very involved, and finally to move this contract forward through through this next phase. This is a big step and really an all hands on deck effort for the Alliance this upcoming year. So we have representation of the cohort groups. If there is an interest in being involved, or you feel that you'd like to get involved with that, the window of opportunity is open as we begin to shape that. But again, we want to make sure that we have representation with the Alliance. And by doing that, that's having someone who's going to volunteer to attend these meetings and to be engaged and to help us with the process. So we hope that you'll engage with us and do that. Any questions on CAPID? All right, thank you. So let's move into the next, which is the successes that we've had working collaboratively with our Indigenous communities here in the region.
Yeah, we were really pleased in January to partner with so many of you who are listed here to bring the Native-led Climate Summit to life at Thatcher Woods on January 25th. It was a sold-out event with 122 participants. Many of you here in the room were there with us. And McHenry County Conservation District and Gina Roxas from Trickster Cultural Center were really instrumental in assembling a Native-led Climate Summit to help us learn more about traditional ecological knowledge and the ways in which this information has been both left out of traditional climate action plans, but how we can more effectively work together to utilize our public lands and the information that is stored there to be able to advance this work moving forward. So we hope that this was just the first step, that there will be follow-up summits like this in the future that we can learn from and participate in and advance this knowledge. We also know that Earth Day, there was a youth-led climate summit at Trickster Cultural Center. So this work is continuing. And one other outcome of this is that we have a two-part series of cafes. One is African traditional ecological knowledge and Native ecological knowledge that is being hosted and put on by the American Indian Center. So the first one is May 22nd, and the second one, I believe, is June 8th. But that information is on our website with our cafes, but we invite you all to participate in some of these advanced learning journeys with us. Continuing with that, we were fortunate to be able to continue the Indian Country 101 cohorts. Our second cohort began in January and will wrap up in April. The first cohort had 71 registrants and the second one had 20. So we are halfway through that journey with the Whitener group. So we're really grateful for the opportunity to bring this forward with urban and community forestry funding from IDNR.
Great, thank you. And thank you for everyone that's participated in those programs. We hope they've been worthwhile. The recordings are available, so if you have not and you're still looking to lean in and to learn more, would encourage you to do so. And I do know, there's been some language or a shift, but I think the Alliance, based on our values, are committed to working with all representatives of our communities to ensure that we have access for all. So it's really important, and we're glad to be able to continue to provide those opportunities for everyone. All right, Force of Nature.
Yes, this is this is award season for the Alliance, and absolute favorite is the Force of Nature Awards. The nomination process is open, so if you know of a force of nature, and that can be a program, it can be an individual, it can be a project, it can be a partnership, it can be a corporate partnership at any scale. Please do nominate them. The period is open from April 1st until July 15th. At that time, there will be an evaluation of all of the nominations that have been received, and those nominations will be advanced for recommendation for awards, and we will come together at October at our in-person executive council meeting and the following celebration of nature to celebrate all of those individuals, partnerships, projects, and work across the region. But it is absolutely, you all know who are the folks that are out in the field doing this work, and we hope that you bring these stories to life so that we can celebrate and showcase them across the region. It's a very simple process, and information about that is on our website. It will come out in a newsletter. I think that Lake has dropped a link in the chat for those that you are online with us, but yeah, by July 15th, get those nominations in. I also don't know that we have anyone with the Excellence in Ecological Restoration Program with us today.
I don't believe we have any of the commissioners. This is an application process for those that recall. We used to have what was a report card at the Alliance, and this is a self-accreditation related back to the Chicago Wilderness Alliance's Biodiversity Recovery Plan, where an organization will go through a self-review and then submit to be accredited to whatever level status, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and all at a very high level if they're demonstrating practices on the landscape that aligns with our green vision with that. So I believe the last one they had a meeting, they were regrouping with commissioners. They had 15 applications being submitted for consideration, and they go out to the site as a commissioner reviews that, scores that, and they too, meeting the criteria, would be recognized as well in the fall through at the awards reception. So really excited. And if you have any questions, definitely connect with Laura or the commissioners on a site. And the way it's designed is you're basically, many organizations choose to say, hey, if we're not platinum, we're not going to spend the time to go into submitting. And I think you need to determine within your organization the merits, because there's great value in demonstrating. Again, if you're bronze, that's great, and you can share to your members of your senior staff or elected officials or board members to say, we can meet this criteria if we were doing these types of management strategies on the landscape, or we need more resources to protect. I mean, it helps you kind of guide through that process. It's a very educational and appreciate the work that the commissioners do with that program. All right, next, we're going to turn it over to our GVI coordinator, Ted Hafner, to lead us through how our working groups are doing.
Good afternoon again, everybody. So I have two slides for you here. There's some highlights from the first quarter. The first one is we have had all goal groups meet, which hasn't happened in like 2 or 3 years. So I'm really proud of that. We've also had a successful relaunch of the initiative for equitable access to nature that had about 1.5 year hiatus. We just had that meeting a couple weeks ago, so that was a really good meeting. The high levels and high level discussions included No Child Left Inside, mentoring, and succession planning, job training, workforce development. Those were some of the higher level things that we discussed, and we have our next quarterly meeting set for the summer to continue discussing those, and that will be in person, I believe. So we're looking forward to that. Our next co-leads for all the groups, all 8 groups, will be May 20th, and we're working to set the agenda for that. But we've already had 1 meeting for that, and we will have our second May 20th, and we'll probably have another in the 3rd or 4th quarter. And then the last update is, as you've heard about the federal funding, we were able to, in January, submit for 3 grants. We have no idea if that will come through because it's disbursement money from some of the IRA and IIJA that Joel talked about. And because they're new, we don't know if they will actually come through or not, but we're crossing our fingers and hoping and reaching out every couple weeks or so to figure out what is going on there. So those are the high level things from this quarter that we're celebrating. In addition to some of the other things that we've celebrated in earlier slides, there was a lot of overlap with the Native-led Climate Summit planning, and I knew that was being discussed in other slides, so I didn't put it here. If you go to the next slide, Laura, please. This is something that I sort of created about 6 to 9 months ago. This is almost a year for me coordinating these goal groups. And so this is just a simple way to track each group and some higher level metrics that are pretty pertinent. The first one is leadership. The second one is energy. The third one is meeting schedule. And then the last one is funding and funding opportunities. So the way this works is I have everything listed across the bottom for metrics. The changes are indicated by the larger circles and what they have shifted from or towards. So for instance, you'll see the Chicago Wilderness Alliance Hub had 2 greens in the last quarter, but now they're both yellows. I won't get into that. But it has to do with some of the granting funds that we applied for, as well as some personnel moves that we're dealing with. The climate moved from yellow to green based on the passage of the CAPN project, as well as we got another $50,000 anonymous grant this year. So that's 2 years in a row that came through. So that funding went to green. The rest of the fundings are yellow because of the federal funding initiatives that Joel spoke about. And then the last change is the equitable access to nature meeting was red because they hadn't met in about 1.5 years, and we did meet last week, and that will probably go to green in the summer. So everything looks pretty good. We've lapsed 1, right? Well, depending on how you look at it, we lost 1 red, which is good. But we have 1 more yellow than we had, and through math and trades, we kept 15 greens. So if you're interested, I track the bottom. I did not put in 2024, all of the quarters, but I did do the last quarter. And this is just an informal way to track the goal team energy and progress that has been going on over the last year. And I'm really proud of the leadership and the folks that have stepped up to lead and co-lead. We have a full slate almost, and they're doing really good work. So I'm really proud of everybody that's stepping up to both co-lead and attend these meetings to move the work forward. Any questions?
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ted, for your leadership and all the co-leads. It's really exciting because when we go back to the Alliance and our Green Vision initiatives, which we spent a lot of time going through and developing, to which that is our strategic, really in essence, our vision plan, our strategic plan going forward, to which where our work is done. And that work continues of the partners identifying through these GVI teams of areas to which they can get that synergy together to move towards those goals. And ultimately, then when we're looking for, there's opportunities for funding, whether it be through federal funds, state funds, philanthropy type of work, or even bringing it through the Alliance to fund some activities if it's for the good of the group of the whole, then those are the types of things that go forward. So it is quite, it is an undertaking because they all move, as you noted, at different levels and different speeds based on capacity, based on interest and leadership. So again, opportunity to call out, you'll keep hearing this theme. If you within your organization, one of the things we would ask is to go back and identify somebody within your organization, if you want to get more involved, that'd be willing to help and help get involved with this group. And that would help with your organization, but also get some boots on the ground or oars in the water, so to speak, to make a difference.
And to follow up Elizabeth's comment, if you're on the fence, let's have a conversation because there's a lot of opportunities, and I couldn't go into depth about what each group and team does. And each team is very different and focuses on different things with overlaps amongst the teams. So if you're curious, please reach out to Laura or I to set a time to meet and discuss what these opportunities might be or what each goal group might be focused on and how you can help.
And I want to read out Phil Nicodemus's statement in the chat and echo it, that it wouldn't happen without you, Ted. So thank you for your leadership. Before we move away from our legislative and federal updates, I'd like to ask Cherie if she would like to say a few words.
I would. I'm sorry to be the bearer of even more bad news and more specific bad news. The Forest Service has had a research office in Evanston going back 40 years, and we are all leaving. And that office is closing. That does not mean that the Forest Service is going away in the region. True Heart will still be part of it. Mike Rizzo, who some of you may know is with International Programs, will still be around. And there are Forest Service folks out at Medewan National Tallgrass Prairie who have been involved in Chicago Wilderness Alliance in the past and maybe in the future. I think that's the main thing. Oh, we also have greetings and farewell from Gina Jorgensen, who was a founding member of the Chicago Wilderness Alliance way back many years, who's been in St. Paul for about 20 years. She is also retiring.
I just want to take the opportunity, if I could, to thank Cherie for 20 years of service with the Forest Service, and also a really active partner with Chicago Wilderness over the past decade or so. And the work that you've done here, Cherie, in the region is impactful, and we appreciate all that you've done and wish you the best of luck going forward. So thank you.
Thank you for that update.
There are a couple of other Forest Service folks in the room. Did you want to say anything, Jess or Liana?
Okay, is this one on? Yeah, thanks, Cherie, for covering that. So I am one of the scientists whose last day is next week with the Forest Service. And just to share a little bit more detail with you all, about 25% of the Forest Service will be leaving through the voluntary departures prior to the RIFs that are coming our way at the end of this month. That's going to have a huge impact on the research and development aspect of the agency. We know that we are losing the majority of all the social scientists in the northern region, which covers 22 states of the Midwest and Northeast. We're losing a lot of folks who are working on climate, of course, environmental justice, and tribal partnerships. I think those are the few things. From an anonymous source, the GLRI Action 4 plan is going to be removed. So I'll just share that in confidence with you all. Yeah, and I don't know if Drew or Liana can speak more to urban and community forestry impacts.
Share that similar to other departments within the agency, we've also had some severe cutbacks. So from a team of urban and community forestry folks representing Region 9, 15 states, it's gone from over 10 to now just 3 of us who will be still in that department. So definitely seen lots of changes. We don't know when the dust falls what that's going to look like. We know that, as Joel mentioned, there's going to be restructuring here over the next couple of months. What that means is anybody's guess. So we're just going to kind of keep moving forward. I can share that all of the grants that I've been monitoring and working with here in the region are still funded and are still receiving funds. So that's a positive thing, and we're hoping that continues. So yeah, it's been a real challenging time, obviously, for the Forest Service, losing some incredibly dedicated, passionate people, including Jess, Liana, and Cherie here. So thank you. And Liana, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to share.
I think you guys covered it well. Yeah, I mean, one bright spot, I guess, is that you do have some qualified people looking for new jobs now in the region. I know Jess and I, being fairly new within the last couple of years to Chicago, would love to get to know more of you, see if we can help out in your organizations at all and just stay involved in this work. So yeah, it's definitely been a hard time in the Forest Service, and really appreciate everyone, my colleagues' support and other partners' support as well.
Eric?
I guess you should strike while the iron's hot. Thank you for saying that, because DuPage County Forest Preserve is currently looking for a plant ecologist. We just lost Scott Coble, who retired this past year, and he had 38 years of experience, and he's probably one of the best regional botanists we have. And that has been closed, but we have not interviewed yet. So there's good people in the room, good people you know. Let me know if you're interested. We can see what we can do to reopen it from that standpoint. So we're looking for good people. So.
Thank you, Eric. And I speak on behalf of the Alliance with a heavy heart of how this has impacted all of the individuals and organizations that we've gotten to work with so closely, and it hits close to home. And the sharing of resources and guidance by talking with one another in a safe space to be able to reach out. And I echo as this transitional time with opportunities to look to our career board that we have on the Alliance, to look to the member organizations and positions that open up, and to mentor and to stay engaged so that we can assist you and guide you through whatever this process is that we're going through, and to be ready to roll. But again, just we feel it's just a sad time. So. With that, we're going to move into new business, and the next item we have is a discussion on priorities. And this has been a process. Like I said before, we've got our green vision. We had the Public Communications Inc. did a messaging communication strategy that we launched 2 Congresses ago with our rebranding and messaging and updates to our current website. But with the steering committee, one of the things that we are tasked with your feedback through the council is to look at identifying particular areas that we're going to work on outside that align with the GVI work, that basically help move the Alliance forward strategically. And so up on Session Lab, and I believe they're going to show through the priorities, and we'll go through, are in 4 areas that align. And I want to thank Victoria, as well as all of the steering committee and officers, with discussion of getting, we've prioritized, and then we asked our managing director, Laura Riley, to say, okay, what do you see based on, we have a staff member of only 1 full-time person within the Alliance. And that's why we rely on all our partner organizations to roll up our sleeves to help. And of course, we're fortunate to employ a part-timer to help us, Lake Schulke, who is with us, and Maria Sadowski with our communication strategy. And then of course, a GVI coordinator with Ted Hafner. But outside of that, how we advance this forward is through the work of all of us. So 4 areas: regional impact, partner outreach, organizational strength, and organizational effectiveness. Again, checking if they align with our green vision and their marketing and communication strategy that PCI did. So next, this is going to be very difficult to read up here. So it's difficult to read on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper anyways, but it is included. And so this has been organized into those 4 bucket areas, like we talked about: regional impact, partner outreach. What I want to leave with you is a question, if there's any questions on what we are looking forward to discussing, as the steering committee goes throughout the year. We are going to be bringing these areas for conversation and then moving them forward into the Alliance and Executive Council, if appropriate, to have dialogue here. And what we also did on certain items, some of them are SOP. Knowing, as an example, we have a Congress every 2 years. We have our Force of Nature. But as far as on our work plan, when you've got a staff of 1 and everybody's leaning in with volunteer efforts, right, we know that we have a particular cadence that those projects and initiatives need to move forward. And so then what is our capacity to take on new initiatives? And we can do that with additional support and leadership or partner organizations that want to help us champion that work. So basically, that's why we wanted to share this with all of you and then get feedback, share you with the status of items that are in progress or things that have already been completed. And I want to give a shout out to Drew Hart and Melissa Kostic. They've been co-leading our new partnership engagement committee, and that was part of PCI's recommendations. That was on our strategy plan to engage that group so we could bring new leadership to the steering committee, bring new leadership, helping with the GVI group, and they've done great. So thank you with that. You've started us off well, but there's more work to be done. So that group, as well as welcoming new members. Anything else, Victoria, that you want to highlight on?
No, thank you, Elizabeth. I would just encourage all of you to take a look at the strategies in each of the 4 priority areas and see if they align with the work that you're already doing within your organization or that you wanted to expand upon with a network of partners. There is absolutely space available for leadership on pretty much all of this. So please do take a look and notice the distinction between the standard operating procedure items and some of the items that emerged from the steering committee retreat late last year. And so as Elizabeth mentioned, we went through a whole prioritization process on the ideas that came up, and then it was sorted by Laura with an eye of like, what can we actually accomplish and in what order is that a priority. And so we're going to endeavor as a steering committee to peel off the standard operating procedure stuff and address it as needed. And then the newer items that emerged during that retreat that we felt were important, we will be adding those to our monthly agendas to have an initial discussion and figure out how much more we want to do with that particular item, or strategy, whether that is forming a committee or a work group or having a discussion at the executive council or so on and so forth. And the idea here is that we are creating or establishing a process that we can roll into next year. So when we, as a steering committee, come together during the retreat at the end of the year, we want to be able to activate the ideas that come out of that starting in January. And so this is sort of an approach that we are going to test out to see if that's actually feasible. But as members of the Executive Council and the Alliance, your input is important to us. So please do take a look at that. And if you have any ideas or suggestions or want to raise your hand to get involved with one thing or another, please do.
Thank you, Victoria.
I just want to add on to that too,
Emily.
speaking as an organization that benefits from CWA, of just think about the initiatives that your organization is leading or wanting to lead and where you need collaborative support. I mean, Open Lands does rarely anything without partnership. And so how can the CWA be a vehicle for your organization to further a specific initiative through partnership? And is there any alignment with some of the key strategies that we've outlined, and kind of think within that lens of what you could potentially champion and how could we support you in that endeavor through this work?
Great points on both accounts. Anything else? Anyone remotely? Vince? He's another officer, so he's helped. Yeah, so any feedback, take a look at this. And like we stated, this is something that we'll continue to bring back through the council to keep you apprised as we work through these items. And then obviously as new initiatives comes to the next is our annual budget. And Emily, do you want to talk a little bit about what we're going to be looking for as we begin to build that process?
Yeah, and help me as I'm new at this if I miss anything, but we're really going to be, the executive steering committee is going to be looking at drafting the initial budget for 2025, both with the standard operating procedure, kind of things that we need to be looking at, like expenses for Congress and other such things. But Also special initiatives that we may need to be planning for. So if you have ideas, please let us know, or if you'd like to participate in that. And we should have a final budget by October for approval.
Right, right. And it's a team approach. So exactly what we're doing now within the working groups and teams. And we're going to talk a little bit about a procedural flow for new initiatives and how we get things to the table. But as we bring that draft budget forward in July, because that'll be our next meeting to gather, everybody will take a look at that. We'll have a presentation and then there's still time to modify till we get to that final budget in October to start the next fiscal year. So we've done each year, obviously with the federal funding that has helped support. We have not relied, but we have received some state funding and some other private donations, which has helped us do our work. And of course, all the sponsorship and partnership contributions, as well as your partnership dues, help provide not only what goes on to the work of our full-time team members and the work of coordinating and the back office stuff, keeping the website up and, ultimately the technology tools that are necessary to facilitate an alliance of gathering. But then we've been able to invest in particular initiatives of training and outreach and all of that other good work that's really important and valuable. So we want to make sure we're investing in the right things, and that's where everybody else comes into play here. Okay. Any other questions on that? Otherwise, I am going to turn it over to Victoria, if you will lead us through our procedural workflow, this new process that has. Is there a document? There will be a line, but she's going to show you the form up there. It's attached.
I think we're waiting for the
PowerPoint.
the slide to come up. But this, essentially what we're going to talk about really briefly here is a new procedural flow we've developed to tackle new ideas that are coming to the Alliance through a few different mechanisms. Sometimes a new initiative is brought to the CWA from a GVI team, a committee, a partner organization, or a member of the general public. We needed a way to figure out how to address the action that they're requesting, know that there is a purpose and reasoning that aligns with our strategies, pros and cons, any related history, budgetary considerations, and leadership, who's leading the initiative. And so we've worked out this procedural flow that has a submission form that the idea initiator would complete, and then follow, and then a series of steps would follow after that to determine how that idea will be either integrated into the CWA or kicked back several times until it's ready to then be integrated. So as I said, the idea could come from a GVI team, a committee, a partner, or a member of the general public. And so, for example, if something is proposed from within a GVI team, the idea would be something like this. The co-leads of that team would solicit approval from all the members of that team to advance the recommendation to the GVI coordinator. The GVI coordinator would then determine if they have enough information to advance the proposal to the managing director. If not, the proposal returns to the GVI team with feedback from the coordinator. If it does advance, the managing director will determine if they have enough information to advance to the chair. If not, it returns back to the GVI coordinator, who then returns it back to the GVI team with feedback from the managing director. If it does advance beyond the managing director, it would move to the chair, who would determine whether to advance the proposal to the officers. If it's not advanced, it's returned back to, and you're starting to get the equation, the formula here. It's returned back to the managing director, back to the GVI coordinator, back to the GVI team with feedback from the chair. If it does advance, the officers will determine whether the proposal will appear as an agenda item for consideration during the next steering committee meeting. And if not, it goes back down the chain. If it is advanced, the steering committee will determine whether to advance the proposal to all of you on the executive council for consideration at a quarterly meeting. And if not, it will go back down the chain. If a decision is needed prior to the next executive council meeting, the managing director will provide all of you the opportunity to advance the proposal for final action via electronic communication. The final decision to act on the proposal will be determined by the simple majority of the CWA Executive Council partners responding. And so that's a step-by-step overview of how a new initiative would move through GVI teams. We have a similar process for a CWA committee, a CWA partner, or the general public. They're almost identical with one big exception that the committees, the partners and the general public don't have a TED, a GVI coordinator, but otherwise very similar. And so it's our hope in implementing this process that we have a fair, balanced, and consistent way of dealing with ideas that sometimes come at us from all directions. So hopefully this is something that all of you agree is useful. And we'd love to have your input if you have any. So did I miss anything, Elizabeth?
No, that was great. And I know, we're very organic and, but in order to avoid, I think, to the point of difficulty in wanting to move forward and kind of who needs to approve it and for like the consistency of resources, this is just a way to get everybody on the same page, so to speak, with equity and fairness and making sure that all voices have an opportunity and kind of understand it. So as you look through this and if there's needing assistance as you fill it out through your work teams or you have an idea, Laura or any of the steering committee members are willing to help you through that process. But we bring it up before we adopt it to this group for any discussion. And then if there's none or any changes, then I would take a motion to accept the new procedural flow and template so we can put it into action and give it a try. And then we continue to improve it as we go, right? If it needs refinement. So any discussion? Hearing none, I would take a motion to accept the procedural flow and form that we've created here to assist us. Thank you, Ted. Do I have a second? Thank you, John. Second. Okay, any discussion? There being none, all those in favor, motion by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. All right, we will put this available, get this out to everybody. Thank you so much. And thank you for the authors and Victoria for championing that to get that organized and all the input that we've had to date. All right, a few more things here, and then we're getting ready for happy hour and socialization here. Rooftop tour. Direct report?
Yes, so most of the things in my report have been covered, so I'm just going to go very quickly. If you haven't already checked out our storefront, it's still active. You can get your spring merchandise. The annual report has been posted. It's linked on our website. I have some slides, but I'm just going to go through those very, very quickly. We tracked very well with our partner renewals, even though we had a late start due to Congress, which pushed us all back. But we thank you for your continued support in renewing your partnership renewals. We mentioned already the EERP and Force of Nature Awards, but the City Nature Challenge is this weekend. It's a biodiversity blitz across the region. Gosh, we have many sites and many partners who are hosting events, including the Park District. And I think is our Field Museum is also hosting. So Lake is going to drop a link in the chat, but if you haven't already signed up, looks like the weather's going to be decent on the weekend and help contribute to biodiversity iNaturalist mapping across the region. There also is an in-person ID the Birds and Bees party on April 29th, where if you have any skills, you can help identify some of the questionable sightings from the weekend. Really, just by the numbers, we had an outstanding year in 2024. Thanks to our partnership, we've grown. We've gotten more involved. We've had more trainings. We've had more cafes, and we've had more attendees, particularly in our teams and in Congress. So thank you for your support. Let's hope that 2025, we continue to grow stronger together and build resilience with each other as we face this uncertainty. So thank you. I'm going to just go forward and thank our steering committee for everything and any announcements before we adjourn.
Do we have any partner announcements, things to share? Some good news? Yes, please, Joe.
I was reflecting on what I heard here after my comments today, especially from our federal colleagues. I know there's a lot of emphasis on what's going, and I did this, what's going to happen in Congress and where the money's coming from and what we can do about that right now. There's something else that I think is really important for the next 3 years, and that is that just because admittedly a very powerful entity in Washington says something doesn't exist, doesn't mean that that's true. And so we all know that climate resilience is critical. We all know that pollution burdens fall more heavily on some people than others. We all know that not everybody has access to the outdoors. And doing that work and saying that out loud over and over the next 3 years in the plans that Chicago Wilderness works on, along with like other coalitions that I'm part of, is really critical. And not being cowed by this idea that somehow these declarations mean that we shouldn't be talking about it, that we shouldn't be trying to do that work in different ways. And I just wanted to emphasize that because it is something we all can do without reaching out to a member of Congress. We can do the work and keep saying what's real, admittedly at a time when I know our resources are going to be strained. And I just wanted to share that because I thought it was appropriate based on the conversation today.
Thank you, Joel. And if I could kind of tag on to that comment, something that we're trying to do at Urban Waters is create more opportunities for in-person interaction between partners. So for example, after our partnership meeting tomorrow morning, which takes place at the beautiful Portage Lakefront and Riverwalk, we are going to offer a partner photo op on the shoreline. So you can either have the dunes behind you or beautiful Lake Michigan behind you with all of your friends and colleagues. And then we're going to go for a short networking hike. And I think, all of us that fight so hard for the environment have to find time in our busy schedules to get out there and enjoy it together. And right now, being away from devices, being away from anything that's monitoring or listening to us, and just being able to talk face to face, sometimes that's where the real magic happens, where we actually learn about some idea and we know we can activate it together. So please stay on the lookout for more opportunities like that. In addition, we're at Urban Waters trying to identify ways that our partnerships can support our federal agencies like the Indiana Dunes National Park, whose natural resources team is going to have a really hard time keeping up with all the invasive species management and other land management activities. And so what better way to get a bunch of nature people together than to dig in the dirt, plant plugs, fight invasives together. So we'll be hosting some volunteer stewardship and / networking opportunities to look out for as well. So I encourage all of you guys to think about doing similar types of initiatives to bring us together and keep us inspired and motivated. And as Joel said, let's tell the stories. Let's keep telling the stories and blast it to the media and blast it to our socials and everywhere else, because we know that we're fighting the good fight and we're not going to stop.
Thank you, Victoria. Well said. Thank you, Joel. Anyone else? John?
Yes, thank you. And echoing what Joel and Victoria just said, I was in Washington doing some public lobbying for our county last month, and I went to Springfield, and there is a general feeling of exasperation that I think that we're all seeing, but there's so much good news on the local level. And the most powerful thing that we have is our own narrative. We should be telling our stories. We should be saying, yes, this program is going to help or hurt these people, and be very specific and be very human. I think that's the most potent force right now that's emerging. I mean, our volunteer force in just our county for the Forest Preserve has mushroomed from about 1,000 to about 1,600 people. And we only have a staff of like 200 something people, but more people are coming out. They're realizing the sheer power of community, and we're all wanting to tell our own stories in our own ways and to do work outside. So that's the really underlying positive thread of all this, is that no matter what we hear from Washington, and when I saw Dick Durbin The first thing he said was, do you believe in the power of prayer? I was like, well, I believe in the power of community. So we can do that. And we are doing it. So just keep on keeping on, as they used to see in the 60s. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Absolutely. Anyone else? Well, again, thank you. This is an inspirational group. And as you go back to your partners and your team members and communities, I think it's really important that we're needed in the alliance of why we exist in our partner organizations, why you exist, and what we can do together is vitally important. And then we keep working forward despite where resources are coming from, because it's too important. And so on the messaging, we're on the right side of this fight. So we keep it going strong. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. We got a tour planned, and then we also then have happy hour. So we hope that you'll stay around and network and use this opportunity to build those relationships and just those personal connective points. So
Yeah, and I can just chime in. So we have a rooftop tour optional if you'd like to participate. My colleague Jane over here with her hand raised is going to be giving that tour. She's a principal here at CMAP for community or communications and engagement. But yeah, you're welcome to leave your stuff in here if you'd like. While